And specifically, notice the set of your shoulders and your head. And we're going to work with the pelvis today. So get a sense of how you stack up over your pelvis. And then in standing, intentionally slouch a little bit. Just round your back, round your pelvis back. Look down as if you're going to see what color belt or sash you wore today around your waist. And then look up towards the ceiling and do the opposite shape. Your chest will come up, be a little erect. And then alternate between those two and just notice the way that your pelvis changes relationship through your spine upwards. And also how your pelvis changes relationship down your legs. You probably feel your feet change, how they interact with the floor. Let that go and just look straight ahead. And then turn a little bit to look not all the way behind you, but just a little bit to one direction and then the other direction. Notice the order of operations here. What moves first? Your head, your shoulders, your belly button. Your legs do something first. And then come up to the front again. And this time, let the order of operations, we'll change it to something kind of artificial. I'd like you to take your right hip backwards. And then don't worry about what your eyes do, what your shoulders and head do. Just take your right hip backwards and then take it back to the front again. Now, I'm not saying you can't allow your shoulders and your head and your eyes to turn. But you'll let the right buttock going backwards, the right hip. When you go back, then you come forward with the right hip. Mostly, I'd like you to notice the relationship between your pelvis and your spine. But I'm asking you to take your pelvis rotating to the right. But without fail, your spine has to move because it's attached. But it can move not as one chunk, but your spine is made up of a whole ton of bones called the vertebrae. And they turn at different points in time. Your belly button turns to the right faster than or could turn to the right faster than up at your collarbones. And then do that the other way a few times. And what's different about the other side, other than the fact that you did it second? Just notice your spine. And let that go. Just take a little stroll around your room. But noticing how your pelvis rotates, you'll notice your arms rotate in the opposite direction, or the shoulders will rotate in the opposite direction of your pelvis. And you'll sense your arms swinging opposite of what your legs do. And then when you come back then and lay down on the floor or your mat, on your back, please. And we'll do a little scan. Just notice your contact with the floor. Notice how your legs are lying on the floor. Is one feel heavier, longer, softer? Is there a difference between the legs? Is there a difference in the way each side of your pelvis contacts the floor? Is there a difference behind your low back on each side? Notice your shoulder blades. Do your shoulders make the same contact? There's one, are they different? Is one more pointy? Is one more flat and broad? Is one a little more forward? In other words, does one shoulder seem closer to the ceiling than the other shoulder? Roll your head a couple times and just see how far you go easily. Just go a very easy distance, just the beginning of rolling each way. Are those two movements the same or different? Let that go, please. And now, why don't you bend your knees? Have your feet standing. And put your hands on your low belly like we were doing last week. The hands will be below your belly button. Your thumbs might be approximately kind of around your belly button. And begin to notice your breathing there. What's it like this week? Is it hard at first to find movement? As you inhale and exhale, does the low belly, where your hands are, does it move more than above your belly button, your upper belly, your chest? Or is there a delay? Does one move before the other one moves? And throughout the lesson today, if you can maintain attention on the sensations in your low belly, that would be a good continuation of what we did last week. I'm not going to mention it as much because there's a lot of things, other things I'm going to have you notice. But occasionally come back to this movement of your breath in your low belly. And then do a movement gently of taking your pelvis a little bit forward and down, and I'll describe what that means. You're going to take your pubic bone a little farther away from your face, and then bring it back. So you're just gonna, and let your belly be soft. It's almost like you want to allow your belly to pooch forward a little bit. Another way to say this is to allow a little bit more of an arch in the low back. And then come back. I didn't say it that way the first time because you don't have to use the muscles of your low back to arch your low back. You can do actually a lot with the other pelvic muscles and the muscles of the legs. And then come back to the middle and just pause a moment. And now I'd like you to do the opposite movement. I'd like you to round yourself so your pubic bone comes closer to your face. So I might use synonyms throughout the lesson for this movement. I might say this is you're rounding the pelvis back. And when you do the opposite, where there's a little more arch and your pelvis tilts away from you, we might call that going forward. Even though it's not really true, like one part of the pelvis goes forward and the other part goes back, but we'll just use an orientation of the top of the pelvis. The landmarks like the pubic bone and the other landmarks up at your, out farther to your hips. And then alternate between those two. And remember to do this smaller than you know you can do. It could be really quite small. And then sense the middle of the place you're rounding back and forward. And can you see if you draw a line in the middle point of that contact? As you go downward and arch a little bit, the line of pressure goes a little bit down away from your face. And as you round backwards, the line of contact comes up a little closer to your upper torso, your face. Now, is that line, is it a straight line? Is it diagonal? Is it wobbly? Does it veer a little bit left or right at a certain point? And then let that go. And now I'd like you to take your pelvis a little bit left and right. And I'd like you to just let your knees tilt a little bit to the right and tilt a little bit to the left. Just enough to notice your pelvis, the weight of your pelvis pouring over a little bit to the right and then a little bit to the left. And then find the shape that this makes on the floor. If the heaviest pressure point behind you, if it was like a pencil or something, and you could draw, and you're just doing this tilting of the knees left and right, like what shape would you make? Is it a straight line from left to right? Is it more of a smiley shape or a frowny shape? If you got up and looked back at the impression you drew, what would it look like? And then I'm going to introduce the idea of the pelvis as a clock. We're going to overlay kind of a virtual or logical clock on your pelvis. And I'll get into which way 3 and 6 is, but left and right are going to be 3 and 6. So when you start to think about going, you're now on a dial, a clock dial. You might find that you really don't go straight left and right. Eventually your legs are going to tilt such that your pelvis is going to drop out and curve upwards. At least the impression on the floor. And then let that go. Come back to the middle. go ahead and place your hands like you had them in the low belly. But I'd like you to specifically sense some other landmarks here. And you can find them with your fingers and if you want to, but so you've got your belly button obviously, and your thumbs might be right around there. And notice out farther, maybe where the base of your hand or your arm might be, there's some bones a little higher than the pubic bone out to the left and right. And that's the front of your pelvis at its highest point. It's the anterior superior iliac crest. So the top of your ilium. It's actually not the top. If you go around to the left and right, like you would put your hands on your hips, that point on each side, it flares out a little taller. But in the front, we're just going to be concerned with those 2 points, those bony landmarks. And then you'll find that like maybe where your pinky is, it might already be there. You could slide it to the crease that exists between your pelvis and your legs. And then you can find how the legs move independently of the pelvis by just taking your knees a little bit inward and out, inward toward each other and then outwards. So just do that. The knees are going to come greet each other and then they're going to come apart. And you'll find you can feel something called the pelvis that stays somewhat still, but the legs do a lot of movement, and that movement's happening in those hip sockets, hip joints. But you may notice some subtle movement in the pelvis. You might find there's a little rounding or arching as you spread your legs, and there might be a rounding and arching as you bring your legs closed. And you may not feel that. It's not a very large movement. And then let that go and just have your legs evenly stacked wherever you've had them before. And now with your hands here at the front of your pelvis, do this movement of taking the pelvis forward and tipping it down so that there becomes a little more space behind the low back. And then you round the pelvis backwards towards you so that your back gets a little closer to the floor. And you keep it small, but maybe think of the pelvis as a bowl, and like as you go downwards and the belly pooches a little forward, think of like if you had soup in there and then you're just going to pour it forward. Onto the floor below you. And you round backwards and the soup would maybe tilt the opposite way. It might pour a little bit into your belly button or something. And so for the purposes of the rest of the lesson, we're going to call this we're going to call downwards, we'll call that 6 o'clock. And then as you tilt your pubic bone towards your nose, we're going to call that 12 o'clock. So just find that idea. So it's a clock as if somebody else were looking at you. If you were standing at the wall and you were a clock and somebody looked at you, that's the orientation we're going to have today. So up is 12, down is 6. Play with tilting. So you take the pressure point behind you to left and right. So you go between 3 and 9 o'clock. So 3 o'clock is going to be over to your left, and 9 o'clock is going to be to your right. And don't worry if that gets confusing. Just remember if you want to have the whole clock in your mind, just remember that it's as if somebody's looking at you, looking at the clock on your pelvis. So if they were looking at the clock, over to the left would be 3, and over to the right would be 9. Now there's some different ways to take yourself towards 3 and towards 9. And so I've had you do it the first way already, which is to tilt the knees. But there's another way that might gain you a little bit of more control of this circular clock face. So see if you can go over to the left towards 3 and do it without tilting your knees. So there's another way to do it, and it will involve your left knee coming a little back towards you and your right knee going a little away from you. Yeah, there's this little shimmy move that you can do where you take the right knee away, the left knee comes toward you, and it will tilt your pelvis over to the left. And it does a lot of other things up your body because the way your spine works. As you tilt the clock over to the left, the right low back comes a little more away from the floor than the left. And then you return. And then can you play with doing that the opposite way? Can you tilt over towards 9 o'clock? And for that, your left knee's going to come towards you, your right knee's going to come away from you. If that's kind of challenging to conceive of, just think of if you're riding a bicycle. Like your pelvis doesn't stay fixed when you ride a bike, yeah? In fact, no part of you stays fixed when you're riding a bike. We think about the legs, but it's not the legs that drive riding a bike. They provide some of the muscle, but what drives it is your spine, your pelvis. And now notice how imperfectly you do this. When you're going over to the left towards 3, do you actually go up towards 2 or you go down towards 4? You just bring your curiosity to it. Just notice differences you can feel. When you go to the right, do you go straight to 9 or do you go down to the right, which would be around 8 o'clock, or up and to the right, which would be around 10 o'clock? And then rest in the middle. Pause. And now let's play with some other directions here. So go again from 12 to 6. The next time you're at 12, instead of going down to 6, can you go down a little to the right of 6? Can you go down to 7 o'clock? And then back to 12. So going to 7, you have to add a little of the leg shimmy to the arching shape, yeah? Yeah, your right knee has to go a little away, even as you arch down to get your pelvis to go down towards 7. And then next time, can you go over to 8 o'clock? You'll go even further to the right, but still a little bit downwards. Then can you go over to 9 o'clock, which is quite a bit less arching. Then pause a moment. Now round up to 12, then stay there. But go from 12 over to 1. Can you just... So it's just going a little bit over to the left. But then go from 1 back to 12 a few times. And can you begin to make this a shape of a curve? If you're going around the clock from 12 to 1, there's a little bit of an arc. And then go from 12 over to 2. You continue to make yourself go around the circle. And then go from 12 down to the left over towards 3. And do that distance a few times, just a quarter of the clock. Can you make a quarter circle? Or can you not make a quarter circle? Do you find it's two lines, at an angle? Or a weavy line, or maybe you go from a straight line down from 12 to 3. Let that go. Now go from 12 to 6 again. And then switch it and go from 1 to 7. So you'll go a little left of 12. And then you'll go down and to the right to 7. It's a straight line across the clock from 1 to 7, yeah? Then can you change it? Can you do a straight line from 2 to 8 o'clock? So it's a little above the left and a little below straight to the right. And then here you are. Then next you'll be at 3 and 9, which is purely to the left and purely straight to the right. And then change it again, and you'll go from 10 o'clock, which is a little up and to the right, down to 4 o'clock, which is down a little down to the left. And then you'll go from, what did I just say, 10 to 4? Yeah, I think so. So now we'll go from 11 to 7. No, sorry. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, 11 to 5. Thank you. 11 to 5 a couple times. And then guess what? You've arrived back to 12 and 6. Then can you go to 12? And then can you go around the entire outside of the clock? So you go the long way around. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It doesn't have to be as fast as I just said it, but then you go from the bottom, you'll go 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then go the opposite way. And then when you get to 12, we'll go reverse it again and go 12, 12, 3, 6, 9, 12. At this point in the lesson, keep doing the circle around the clock. And I meant to say here that I want you to sense how that movement goes up your spine into other parts of your body. First, notice your head. Notice the back of your head as you do the circle. You may notice that the back of your head makes a circle on the floor. And at the point where you're at 12 o'clock with your pelvic circle, notice if your head bobs a little back because the spine is being pushed upward. And then as you get to the 6 o'clock part of the circle, notice if your chin kind of bobs down towards your sternum because your spine is pulling, you're being pulled by your pelvis downwards a little bit. So just play with that and just notice that for the next few movements. Thanks. Is it easier to go from 12 to 12 on the clockwise course? I guess literally clockwise, or counterclockwise? Can you breathe as you do this? Can you notice your breathing as you do this? Do you have to hold your breath to do this? Do you have to stick out your tongue and do this? Do you have to tighten your jaw to do this? It's like, wait, you want me to notice more than one thing, Michael? You might be able to notice 2 things at the same time. Maybe more. All right, let that go. Take a rest in whatever position you'd like to rest in. You could have your legs long. You might like to roll on your side and rest. Some people get tired of being on their backs. It could be a nice, nourishing thing to rest on your side. But regardless of what position you're resting in, notice anything that's changed since we started. Has any of your tone softened anywhere? Has it tightened anywhere? Sometimes we feel in lessons we actually get tighter because other places got soft. So it's not that the tight place got tighter, but the soft place got this, whatever softened away from, so that you feel the tightness more. Notice the backs of your shoulders, and did the shoulder blades change? Is there something about all this pelvic clockness that caused the shoulders to lie differently than they were at the start? Did one of the shoulders get closer to the floor? All right. Why don't you go roll to your side or wherever you need to grab your towel or pool noodle, and then what I want you to do is to have it nice and tight. If it's a towel, roll it up, and I want you to put it behind your pelvis. And I want you're going to lie over it on. I want it to be like side to side, yeah, perpendicular. So it's not lined up with your spine. It's pointing out at each side. So I want you to have it in the middle of the back of your pelvis. So it's not down all the way at the tailbone, and it's not all the way up at the top of the sacrum. It's about midway. And have your knees bent. Well, first just notice how your contact changes. It's obvious, yeah? Not just that your pelvis is up on a thing, but you'll notice that your spine feels different. Your spine drapes onto the floor in a different way because your pelvis is high. So then bend your knees and have your hands down in that low belly area in front of the pelvis. And now do a movement of where you tilt to go down, to take the pressure behind you down towards 6 o'clock. And then you'll go back upwards to 12 o'clock. And notice each time you go down to 6 o'clock, can you feel that it's quite different how you might pour a bowl of soup down towards the floor below you? If your pelvis is a bowl, yeah. That there's something, you might find that somehow it's more dramatic how you tilt this way. That it's not so much arching the back, but it's like the base of your pelvis kind of drops below the towel or noodle. And I don't know about you, I mean, you might find that there's something, your tailbone, that very tip of your coccyx, might kind of be able to hook the towel. So that's, kind of using it as leverage is kind of like, almost like your tailbone wants to push the towel upwards behind your back. You're using it as a little leverage to arch to 6, and then as you round back, you might find that your upper sacrum, your low back, kind of pour down to the top of the towel so you're getting closer to the floor behind you. Now, I haven't talked about it yet, but I actually meant to bring your attention to how your spine pushes up and down through your head. So begin to notice that, if you haven't already. Notice as you round backwards, does your spine, since your spine flattens in the low back, notice if it kind of pushes up your spine so that you feel your head pushed upward, and you might have a little tilting that happens in the head. where your face kind of goes up, looks up a little bit because it's being pushed. And as you arch downward, can you notice the opposite? Does it kind of pull your spine, sliding your spine down along the floor? So with that movement and with the arching down toward 6, you may feel that the chin actually kind of, because your head's being dragged on the floor, your chin kind of tucks down, gets closer to your throat. And you might even feel a movement like in your shoulder blades as you hook and arch down, that your shoulder blades get pulled a little, or maybe your spine kind of glides between your shoulder blades. And notice you don't have to do it that big. You don't have to do it dramatically to feel it. Try doing a very small rounding and arching between 6 and 12. And see how small can you do it, but still notice something happens with the contact of your head on the floor. And notice, are you still breathing? Of course, I know you're still breathing because you're alive, but were you breathing evenly? Now, what effect could the breath have on this? Why don't you do this? Why don't you just inhale like half the amount of air you might normally and stop and just hold your breath. And do this rounding and arching a few times from 12 to 6 with your breath held as long as you can, and then get another breath. But notice this dynamic of sliding the spine. And notice how easy, does it make it more difficult to round and arch? You can still do it, but is it more, it's less smooth, maybe less pleasurable? And then try it a few times breathing constantly, evenly. Does that make it easier to breathe? So when we breathe, we've got mobility between each of our ribs, amongst other things. And since there's movability, then when we're doing something dynamic with ourselves, the ribs can move in other ways too. Now pause and try to see what it's like to go from 3 to 9. So you'll go over to the left towards 3, go over to the right towards 9. Now what's that like lying on this towel or noodle? Notice how the roller might get in the way of clearly drawing a line. The roller also might, even though it kind of might get in the way, it just allows you to feel it in a different way, maybe more clearly even. So as you go left and right, do you go right along the line of the towel or roller? Or do you drop a little below at one point or a little above the towel? Is it easier or more difficult to steer one leg away from you and one leg toward you and then alternate? Can you still breathe as you do it? And now, when you go up to 12, the next time go up to 12 first of all, and then begin to do a circle around the clock. So go from 12 around to the left towards 3, and then down towards 6. I don't know, this time let's just stop at 6 and then reverse it. Can you go from 6 back to 5 and forward 3, 2, 1, up to noon again? And do that left side. The next time you go down to 6, keep going. You go to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 until you're up to 12. And then do the right side a few times. Just that. What's it like to do the half circle on the right? Is it easier to make a circle on the right or easier on the left? Or does it not matter? And is it not even a circle? How is the roller change this? Is it more of an oval? If it's oval-like, is it oval-like to the left, right, or is it oval up and down? What line does the oval run on? And then do a few lines across the clock. So at some point, stop, and you've already gone from 12 to 6, so try going from 1 down to 7. Just a little up, little of left of center down to a little right of center below you. Then try going from 2 to over to 8. And you've already done 3 to 9. Then you can go down to 4, down and to the left and up and to the right to 10. Then from 5 below you down up to 11. Now pause a moment, and I'd like you now to adjust the roller. I'd like you to take it a little further down away from you. So you're going to have it even more, you're going to actually have it maybe right behind the tailbone. It doesn't have to be exact, but just whatever you're doing, just take it a little farther below, but make it so it's still behind your pelvis. Then put your hands in your lower belly, and now tilt from 12 to 6 in this configuration. Notice what's changed. Now going down to 6, your pelvis may not drop backwards toward the floor the same way. And as you round up towards 12, you might find there's a lot more of your pelvis that gets back onto the floor. The rounding might be more dramatic than arching now. You don't need to force it to be big, but you'll just do your 12 and 6. It might be a little more of a rounded posture. Because you might bump into the roller as you go down to 6. And do a couple of the lines across. I'm not going to walk you through all of them, but from 1 to 7, and pick any point on the clock and just go, at some diagonal that you choose. Just noticing the roller, how it maybe gets in the way. But just think of it in a playful way. Just kind of seeing how it feels. Now try making the circle of the clock. And remember, it doesn't have to be big to still be a circle. It might be actually hard to make it as big as maybe you did without a roller. So just keep it kind of small. But now as you make a circle, I don't know if you're going clockwise or counterclockwise, but play with it in each direction. But what's the shape of the circle? Is it now more of an oval? Is it more of an oval out to the left and right? In other words, is there more sideways length to the clock? It's more like a Salvador Dali clock. And now why don't you adjust the roller again? Take it now to the other extreme. Take it much closer to the top of your sacrum. It's still behind your pelvis. And here, you'll go from 12 and 6. And this time, as you go to 6, your bum might really start to come down onto the floor. And then as you round up towards 12, you might find that, oh boy, I can't really fully round. Well, I guess you are still fully rounding. It's just you're not rounding as dramatically into the floor because you've got this roller. Now, do it relatively small. And for goodness sakes, if you've been having some back strain in this lesson, then just go even smaller. We're not going for any kind of specific like stretch. We're not trying to force some mobility. We're doing it a little smaller than that. We're learning how to notice our movement. We're noticing how when we make one movement, another movement happens. The practice of Feldenkrais is to hone our ability to make distinctions in ourselves. Because with more and more distinctions in our subconscious movement patterns, the more choice we have. And the more choice we have as humans, the less limited we feel. And the less limited, fixed, and depressed we might feel. We all want more choices, right? Now, did I have you do what am I having you do? I'm having you do 6. Did I have you do 3 and 9 yet? I don't think so. So go from 3 to 9. Notice how it's different being perched on this roller this way in a more forced arch. And then go ahead and do the clock. Go around it. You can start, maybe you'll want to start at 12. And you'll go around and notice as you're making this circle, so yeah, we'd have more of a forced arch. Now, which way does the oval go in this position? It might be a different direction of an oval. Now let that go, and why don't you take the roller out and just rest. You can rest with your legs long, you can have your knees bent, whatever you like. And just rest here and just let your brain integrate your sensations here. Often after we've had a constraint that's so dramatic, you might feel like you really sink into the floor in a different way. Do you feel the length of your spine differently? Our brain is pretty sharp when it comes to movement learning. We get very used to something. When you practice something like this for even 15 minutes or whatever on a fixed object, your brain wants to get good at it very quickly because it's novel, it's weird. There's a survival aspect. Your brain is very occupied with keeping balanced and not falling. It's one of the very primary things that happens without thinking about it. So once they get good at that, and so then when you take it away, it's like, well, I need to be ready to be on a roller, or I need to be ready to be on a regular floor. So you have to average it out. Same reason batters in baseball, they'll pick up 2 bats. You've seen it, like swing that a few times. So they have a lot more availability than when next time they hit with a single bat. Now, grab your roller again, bend your knees. And then you'll put it behind your pelvis, but this time do it in the other direction so it's lined up with your spine. But you'll have it only in the part on your pelvis. So you're going to just be you're going to be on the top of the roller. Most of it's going to be protruding down towards your heels. Yeah. So your pelvis is on the top of the roller. It's parallel to your spine, or actually lined up the direction of your spine. And then your low back and the rest of your spine is draped onto the floor. Does that make sense for everybody? Looks like it. So now in this position, go from 12 to 6. Now you're drawing a line down the length of the roller and then up the length of the roller. But then try going from 3 to 9. And you're going to droop off the roller a little bit. So do this small. Don't. If you start obtaining some strain in the low back, then do it smaller. If your back's getting irritated, then you just can stop. You can do this part of the lesson without the roller on. You can just do it on the floor. And can you notice your breathing? And then try doing some diagonals. Go from 1 to 7, go from 2 to 8, etc. Go the other way, go from something like 2 to 8, etc. Just notice the weirdness that a new position gives you. And then do circles. Go around a quarter of the clock once or twice, and then go around half of it. Maybe do the left half, the right half. And then just do the full circle. Now notice how this circle curves. You might have a totally different oval shape. If you haven't go the opposite way if you haven't yet. Allow your breathing to happen. As you do this circle, notice are there circles happening in other places? We talked a little about the back of the head. Does your back of your head kind of bob? You might bob up and down, but does it bob a little left and right? Is there a circular-ishness? Circular-ishness. Made up a word. What about behind the shoulder blades? Is there a circular aspect happening there? What about, like, I don't know, the middle of your spine, but just behind the solar plexus or behind the lower rib cage somewhere? Is that place to a circle? Or an oval? And then why don't you remove the roller again? And then just sense yourself on the floor as you rest a moment. And feel your contact with the floor. What's changed since you started this lesson? Notice again your shoulders. Did they get closer to the floor? What are your legs like now? If you compare each leg, if one's felt heavier or tighter or something compared to the other one, has that changed? If the legs felt turned in or out or one more than the other, has that changed? Has the shape of your pelvis changed? What about behind your low back? Did the low back get closer or farther from the floor? Notice the length of your spine. And then roll your head a little bit left and right again. Just the very easiest rolling. Did that change? Is it easier to start rolling each way? Let that go and excuse me, bend your knees again. And you can put your hand on your low belly if you like, or both hands, and notice your breathing. Then round and arch a few times from between 6 and 12. very easily, smoothly. And sense the line you draw. Has this 12 to 6 line gotten clearer as a result of all the practice you've just done? Is it easier to find that pressure point, the directionality of it, the down and up? And if it was like a little jagged before, or if it was not straight up and down, has it gotten more that way? I mean, more smooth, I guess is the word I'm looking for. And then go straight across from 3 to 9 and back. Just go straight left, straight right. Has that gotten clearer? Then begin making this circle around the clock. If it seems like you started out kind of big, can you do it even smaller? Could you go around a clock so small it's maybe like your granddad's pocket watch or something that's like, can you find an ability to go around a circle that small with the apex of the pressure point behind you? Can you still feel the stuff that could happen through your spine? Does that go all the way to the back of your head, even though it's smaller? And then make it a little larger if you like. Is it easier to keep it as a circle when it's small or when it's large? And then let that go. And just before you come to standing, just notice your breathing for a moment. Did your breathing change? And when you're ready, slowly roll to one side. And gradually you'll come to sitting. And you'll eventually come to standing. Now come to standing, and when you get there, just sense your contact in standing. Notice the set of your shoulders now. Do you feel more up in the room? Do you feel more down in the room? Is your gaze resting on different things? Notice the play of light and shadow. And then do some playful things I had you do at the beginning, where you intentionally round yourself to slouch, look down, and then you intentionally unround a little bit to look upwards a bit. And just notice, you don't need to do it bigger or there's no particular size I want you to do this, but do it small enough that doesn't make a lot of noise. You don't want to go into a stretch or a big movement, but can you do it to a size where you can sense what your pelvis does? Your pelvis takes a big part of arching to look up and rounding to look down. As you arch to look up a little bit, can you sense that low belly actually goes down towards the floor in front of you? The belly button goes forward and the rest of your belly below just droops downwards. And your coccyx, your tailbone, actually goes backwards and a little upwards towards the back of your head. And as you round, you go the opposite way. Can you feel 12 and 6 o'clock? Can you do a 12 to 6 o'clock in standing? And maybe don't even do anything with your neck. Just go 12 and 6 o'clock in standing. And feel how your weight shifts. Or maybe not so much your weight, it just might be that your feet grab the floor differently, depending on whether you're rounding or arching the pelvis. And then come to the middle place and play with taking the pelvis to the right and to the left, independently of whatever your head is doing. Is this different than the first time I had you do right and left with your pelvis in standing? Do you feel like you're ready to do the hula? Yeah. And now forget about the lesson and just turn and look a little left and right. Somebody shouted your name and you're like, oh, who's that? You're going to look left and right. Do you turn left and right differently now than the first time I had you do it? And then let it all go. Just take a walk around your space. And you're just sensing the movement of the hips and the shoulders. There's opposite rotation happening in the upper body, lower body. But just sense the movement radiating from your pelvis, up through your spine, down through your legs. Maybe your hips feel less tight, or maybe you don't notice anything in the hips. All right. Thank you for coming.